Welcome back to the Boardman Black and Gold podcast with Zane and David. The Super Bowl happened just 2 days ago, and we figured that this was probably a good time for us to dive into the Steelers as far as the 2025-26 season goes. A little bit of a retrospective, if you will, just looking back on maybe some of our predictions, some of the feelings that we were experiencing throughout the course of this season, and just kind of have an open-ended conversation and kind of see where we are as now we are officially into the NFL offseason. I think we're both quite thrilled that the Patriots lost the Super Bowl and got absolutely bludgeoned in this Super Bowl. And personally for me, David, that kind of sets a sense of, I don't know, I'm a little bit encouraged, especially, I mean, obviously I'm very encouraged that they lost, but if they had gotten to 7 Super Bowls before the Steelers did, I don't know how the Steelers, I don't know if they even think about it in the first place, but me as a fan, I think that this is kind of like a fresh start for us. Obviously, Mike McCarthy and all the new coaching staff. But for me, it's like, okay, now you can really hone in on let's get to 7 first and find out how we do that. Because if the Steelers couldn't have gotten to 7 in the last 10 years, I think the Patriots getting there this year and really waking up and like saying, hey, like we're playing for 7 Super Bowls. If you're the Steelers, like we have not been playing for 7 Super Bowls. So that kind of gives me just a little encouragement, I think, especially seeing the result of what happened just a couple days ago.
Absolutely. And I think it fits our mold of our history because, I think that you said it perfectly. Like seeing that the Patriots, like, I don't think anyone thought either of these teams were going to be in the Super Bowl, but for sure the Patriots, it was like, all right, rebuild, it's going to get better, but they're not going to be a playoff team. So I think that really should light a fire under us. And, I think that with the coaching change, like this is historically what's happened. We were the first to 3 rings, the first to 4 rings. And then, towards the end of Chuck Noll's career, it just wasn't able to get there. And so I was like, all right, we got to get number 5. Like when the Niners were first to 5. We gotta go. We gotta pick up. And then, Cowher comes in and gets that 5th ring. And I was like, all right, we're tied for 5. And then he steps down and Tomlin comes in. It's like, let's go. Like we're still moving. And we get that 6th ring. And then we've kind of gone back to the not quite able to get it done. And then it's like, okay, like we got to get this 7th ring. And I'm hoping that that's the mentality that Rooney had in making these decisions. And that's the mentality that McCarthy has, because that really is all it should be about, is like, let's go. Like this is the city of Pittsburgh, like, city of champions, like 6-burg. All right, let's make it 7-burg.
Right.
Like it's time.
Yeah. And we've been talking about the stairway to 7 for a while now. And again, thankfully, that is still in play. And for me, that's important just because, like you said, there's a new air about what's going on. And if you don't shake things up, and sometimes maybe if you don't even see another person have an opportunity that you probably should have already had, then it's like, okay, wake up call. What do we got to do to get back there? Because again, we've just been floating around aimlessly. Like you're in a boat, but you don't have any oars. So you're just at the whim of whatever's happening around you. That's just what the Steelers have felt like for the last several years. But now, regardless of what you think about the direction that we're going, we have at least a direction. We have a new coach. We have a new system in place. We're gonna look a lot different, and that's the fact of the matter. But I think, like, just looking back on this season, I want to get your thoughts on some of the things that transpired, and going back. And I actually listened to some of our off-season episodes from last year, just before the season started, and there's a couple of talking points I just want to revisit. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers was the big talking point this offseason. We literally had to re-record our schedule predictions because we recorded it, and then the very next day we signed A-Rod. What do you think holistically over the course of this season that Aaron Rodgers did in terms of your expectations that we had just before the season started?
That's a good question. I think I'm trying to put myself as unbiasedly at week 1 as I can. But I think that he did what I thought he was going to do. I thought that he wasn't as good as he used to be. I didn't think he was horrible, obviously. And I think going into the season, I was like, I don't see a huge change between him and Russell Wilson. And so I think that stereotype went through this season. And I think that if we're looking like, I mean, I think I'm pretty sure we both agreed neither of us really wanted Aaron Rodgers, specifically me. I was very against Aaron Rodgers, and I think that what we saw out of Mason Rudolph in the minutes he played, I still would confidently say that I wouldn't have minded him not being on the team this year. I genuinely don't think, besides that game against the Jets where he had all the emotions going for him, I genuinely don't think he did anything that Mason Rudolph couldn't have done that would have changed the course of this season, in my opinion.
I'll kind of push back on that because, in the one game that Mason Rudolph did play against the Bears, I defended him, sure, but I think that there is a different level of play that we saw out of Aaron Rodgers, and I'm probably in disagreement that I think it would have turned out the same if Mason Rudolph was at the helm. And I think that goes into a question that we'll have to dive in down the road. What do we do with Mason Rudolph this upcoming year? Because I believe he's still under contract. With the dynamic of Will Howard, obviously, I mean, if Mike McCarthy's here, Aaron Rodgers is probably a 99% chance to come back, which again, that in itself is a whole nother conversation. But I think that Rodgers, I think he was just a tiny bit better than Russell Wilson. And part of my hope is that he actually coached the younger players on this team to a level that they maybe weren't at prior to that. I don't know how much of a coach Russell Wilson was. I mean, he was a leader, sure, but Aaron Rodgers definitely has the witty veteran, dissects the field as it's happening. And I think he helps in a way, and maybe his communication method is kind of the problem. Looking back again, early on in the season, we weren't super thrilled with the way that he's yelling at teammates and stuff like that. As the season progressed, how did you view that? Because I kind of have a specific opinion on that specifically.
Yeah, I think that you made a lot of great points, and I think that Aaron did do a good job at times, and it wasn't entirely bad. And I would agree that it was probably better than Russell Wilson, especially in the coaching aspect, because we really did need that. But I think that I agree. My opinion changed of his yelling. I think I started to understand it. Towards, I'd say, the last 4 games specifically, when they would cut to him and he'd be yelling, I'd be like, yeah. I'd be yelling too. Before, earlier in the year, I'm like, dude, chill out. These guys are your teammates. But by the end of the year, I was like, yeah, you're dang right. You better yell at him. He just messed that up or whatever. So I think that it'll be very interesting. Like you said, it is probably a 99% chance that Rodgers is coming back. And I think that Arthur Smith and Aaron Rodgers were at odds, because I think the reason why I would have been content with Mason Rudolph is because, yes, it would have looked completely different, but he would have done what Arthur Smith wanted. And I think that would have worked out fine enough. Kind of similar result, very different, like,
Way to get there.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Um, and so I think that the high positive here is that Mike McCarthy and Aaron Rodgers understand each other to a T, that there's not going to be this opposition where he's constantly yelling like he's the only one that knows what's going on. Mike McCarthy's going to be like, yeah, I know too. We're on the same page.
So part of that too, I wonder, do you think the team overall rallied more around Aaron Rodgers than they did Russell Wilson, 2 years ago, I guess, at this point?
I think so. I do. I think that there was no unity in 2024. George Pickens was his own guy. I feel like Russell Wilson has really built a bad reputation of himself, where he is this whole facade of this loud leader, and he's on the sideline like, "Come on, guys, let's go, let's go." But it doesn't really seem like that he has the locker room. It doesn't really seem like he's ever really had a locker room. It was the Legion of Boom that had the Seattle Seahawks. So I think that Aaron Rodgers has a locker room when he goes into it, specifically offensively, and specifically because he's this veteran and, because of everything that's on his resume. And I mean, heck, he's like a father figure to Calvin Austin in height and age. So it's just, these guys probably really want to just sit down and listen to the wisdom that, Chris Collinsworth, I think, said it so much about how they were going to his house and learning routes and stuff. I think that he had the locker room and had guys ready to rally with him, especially offensively.
I guess part of that too, I wonder, Do you think that the unity played into the success and the quicker transition from, when it went bad last year or 2 years ago, I guess, it just never got back. Whereas this year, when things went wrong offensively, minus the playoff game, like they got back eventually, like they would bounce back. And, part of that is like sometimes like the consistency with Aaron Rodgers, he would win one and then he'd lose one, he'd win one, then he'd lose two, that kind of thing. But it seemed like the consistency aspect of it was much better than under Russell Wilson. Because again, under Russ, when it went south, it never went north again. Whereas it seemed like under Aaron Rodgers, it seemed like it could at least go back north. And do you think that can happen in a second year with Aaron Rodgers, I guess?
I do, and I think it could be better. And I think you're absolutely right in that, like, yeah, with Russell Wilson, like the we weren't really a team. So once the wheel came off, like that was it. Like we weren't recovering. But with Aaron Rodgers, we saw it multiple times with multiple different kind of losing skids, rough skids, and we kind of have a bounce back game. And it's like we figure it out. And it really felt like in that Baltimore game and even the Detroit game, it was like it felt like a team that was like, okay, we're not good, but we're a team and we're gritted. We're like, you know, getting our what's the word? Biting our teeth through it together. And I think that that's what those games felt like. And there was nothing like that in 2024. So I think that it could get a lot better. I think that they went through a lot of tough things in 2025 and a lot to unite them there. And I think also a lot of hope, a lot of like new, fresh things that it's not just, I mean, heck, these guys on this team that have been here for more than 3 or 4 years, it's like they've experienced the same thing over and over and over again. And it's like now they can take all that, learn from it, and go into a completely new environment and, see what the outcome can be.
I think looking back, and I don't know why I had this thought recently, but Najee Harris moving on, that might have been like the best thing to happen to our offense this year. And, no disrespect to Najee Harris, but the combination of Jalen Warren and Kenneth Gainwell was probably the most encouraging part of our offense, if we're being honest. So, do you have any thoughts on that? Obviously Najee didn't play much because he had the injury, which really sucks for him because I thought that he would have succeeded in some respect in Los Angeles. But what are your thoughts on that whole situation?
Yeah, I think that I love Najee. I think he's a really good player, a good person, and it does think that he was hurt. But in one way, it's almost a little beneficial because the entire Chargers O line was out injured, so maybe they'll all come back a little healthier and they'll all have a bit of a better year. But yeah, I think that it did end up working really well, and not for the reason I thought it would. I thought it would because young star Caleb Johnson was going to get some touches and figure some things out. But no, that wasn't the case. We saw the Jalen Warren we've seen the past few years being excellent. And then we saw Kenneth Gainwell, who completely took me by storm. When we signed him, I was like, oh, sure, like whatever. He was a suitable number three, number two for the Eagles. But I mean, I think that Jalen Warren has proven to be utility, but he is way more ground game. Kenneth Gainwell is a like Roger Craig like utility belt that I think he's going to be so amazing. Kind of looking ahead if he stays with us, I think that it felt like a diamond in the rough.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he won team MVP. I mean, you don't just do that randomly, especially again, while he's kind of 1B on the depth chart, he was technically the second running back. So that fact alone is super encouraging to me. And if I had any specific thing that I wanted to do this offseason, it is make sure that he comes back next year. Because honestly, with the way he played, he probably can get some money in the offseason if he really wants to. But that's one of those guys that, again, if I'm Mike McCarthy or probably, again, Omar Khan, since he's probably going to make most of the decisions, I'm saying we have to have Kenneth Gainwell back. You can't just lose your self-proclaimed team MVP and hope to be any semblance of the same thing that you just were, right?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I don't think it would make much sense if we don't sign him back. Because, like, yeah, when I was thinking, even of that Detroit game, specifically of like team, like his like image is what came into my mind. Like, I feel like he is a big part of this team camaraderie. And that's just total gut feeling, because I don't even know if I've heard him say a word ever, but I just feel like he is a crucial factor in this team being united.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think the other big part of the offseason especially was the Minkah Fitzpatrick trade that got us Jonnu Smith and Jalen Ramsey. What are your thoughts on that in retrospect? Because it's kind of a mixed bag. Ramsey didn't start great. He had a couple of like good games early on, but then you think of that, that Seattle game, he had the interception, but he got cooked the rest of the game. He didn't exactly start well, and then they moved positions for him, and he kind of figured it out later on, but then even towards the later part of the season, we didn't really hear from him too much. What's your thoughts on the Minkah Fitzpatrick trade like a year later, essentially?
Yeah, I guess overall we won, because I don't think. Well, I don't know. Jalen Ramsey feels like a WWE character to me. Like it looks like he's not there to play football. Like in sometimes, and I know he's a tough hitter and stuff like that, and that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that he's only there to hit someone hard. He's like, I don't want to do the rest of this stuff. Just get me in the spotlight. And so, yeah, again, like I said, when this news dropped and it was insane, I was like, I don't like Jalen Ramsey. Ever since he was on the Jags, I have never been a fan of him. That still rings true. He is still the same person. And with Jonnu Smith, I think he's an extra cog in this tight end room we have. So I probably think it's an unnecessary trade. I think that, again, Minkah Fitzpatrick, though he had 2 years, especially, of just like, where is he? What's going on? He was a Pittsburgh guy, like we traded for him, and he had a lot of iconic plays throughout his tenure. And, I was very upset to hear it at first. And I think I still am like, I don't know if that trade was really all that necessary, especially now that Arthur Smith's gone. So the whole, promotion of Jonnu Smith was like, oh, Arthur Smith's reuniting. It's like, well, he's gone, so it don't matter. So, I don't know. I kind of find it to be a pointless trade, because I don't really know Mika's statistics in Miami. Every highlight I saw, it didn't look like he did anything crazy, but it didn't look like he was necessarily like playing poor.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm looking back, I don't exactly know what to think of it. And kind of like you said, it's one of those where, both teams didn't really net any positive from it. Not to say that, I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm not super educated on what Minkah did, but at the same time, I know what Ramsey did, and I know what Jonnu Smith did or perhaps didn't do while he was here, and, kind of was just dead weight, honestly. And it felt like, his obligatory touch per game, they'd run an end around with him, or they'd toss him, like a little 5-yard out route, and that was his one touch a game. Whereas it seemed like bringing him in, we thought that he was supposed to be a bigger part of the offense. And again, this tight end room just seemed so underutilized. Once Darnell Washington goes out, then it's like, okay, where's Freiermuth? Where's Jonnu Smith? This should be their time to shine. But frankly, I feel like the only tight end in our room this year that really did their job because the team put them in a position to succeed was Connor Hayward. And he was just getting his rear end pushed every couple of days and whatnot. So it's just really strange. And, I guess maybe this is a point to where we start to talk about Omar Khan. And, maybe this is a real conversation we have to start having. You can look at his draft. I've got the draftees that we had this last year pulled up. Derek Harmon, I think we both like. Caleb Johnson really just, didn't pan out, and maybe he didn't get his fair shot, but at the same time, he didn't do much when he got the shot. Jack Sawyer, I think, is a great pick, and I think he has a really, really good opportunity to be a great NFL player. Y.A. Black is great depth. Will Howard, I don't know. We'll see. What are they even going to do with him? Is that a wasted pick? Are they going to try to force something with him? I don't know. Carson Bruner seemed like he was very good on special teams. Like, that's fine. That's probably what he's going to be limited to, though. So, as far as those guys, there's some good. There's also some not good. And then there's some okay in the middle. In spots where you kind of expect there to be some okay. But looking back on the year, what do we think about Omar Khan's job of fashioning this team to win? And do you think that with the new regime that he has kind of calling the plays, for lack of a better term, do you think he can do that again to equip this team to succeed and do what they need to do to actually, win a playoff game or something like that?
I hope he does, and I hope it's in a bit of a different way because I feel like it'll be interesting to see him with a new head coach because I do feel like he probably felt pressure to produce right away for Mike Tomlin. To like, I can't let him have a losing season. I was like, so let me produce, let me trade for this guy, let me sign this guy. I think that when it comes to the draft right now, and we'll see how this draft goes, but I'm good with his draft picks. Like I'm not upset. I also don't know how much of a hand Mike Tomlin has. I think he had a decent say. So we feel like it'll be really exciting to see Omar Khan this season because it really will be like him and obviously Mike McCarthy will have his say. But I do think Mike Tomlin had a bit of an overextension into general manager and too much of a say. So I am excited about that because I think that over these past 2 years, it's really interesting. Before these past 2 years, the Steelers were like, we aren't doing anything. No trades, like no free agents. Like we would rarely sign a free agent or rarely make a trade. And when we did, it did strike gold in our history, but we rarely did it. Like Minka Fitzpatrick, James Ferrier. Like you can think of these guys. It's like the rare time we did it, it was good. These past 2 years, there's been a trend in the NFL that I am not a fan of that like leaks towards the NBA, in my opinion, and it's all started with the 2021 Rams. And I feel like that was the first time in the NFL I ever heard the term buy a Super Bowl because that's what they did. They traded for Stafford, they signed a bunch of free agents, and there they were, they won a Super Bowl. And now I feel like every team is trying to do that. And I feel like we almost adopted that these past 2 years with Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, the other additions we made. And then the complete, rehaul and completely trying something new the next year. It's like that feels very NBA to me. And there's a lot of reasons, but that is the biggest reason I don't like the NBA is because a guy's on a different team every year. And it's not teams you're rooting for, it's players. And it's like, I don't really like that. I like the team. And so I hope that Omar Khan, the past 2 years, because I haven't been happy with the trades and the free agents these past 2 years. That's not the kind of team in football I like to watch. I don't like the buying a ring. I like the building a ring and developing a ring. So I hope that wasn't him and that was more so Tomlin. Because if that is Omar Khan, I don't like that. And, I'm content with his drafts right now, but I do not like that at all. So it will be interesting to see this offseason how we maneuver that. And that's not to say, like, if we make a free agent signing here and there and it's a good signing, I'll be perfectly happy with that. But I think we've jumped off the deep end these past 2 years and done way too much, and it's been too unnecessary. So I'm hoping that we kind of take a step back with that. But kind of, pointing that to you, how have your thoughts been of Omar Khan?
I think that I'm trying to be a little bit more convicted, I think is the word, over his moves, because I think maybe for a period of a couple of years, like especially these last 2 years, I think my outlook on Omar Khan was, look what he's doing. He's trying. Like, he's trying to buy a ring, to put it into your terms. And in my mind, it's like, okay, there's no problem with that because he's trying. But at some point, you got to pull a Yoda and say, do or do not. There is no try.
Absolutely.
So we're both Star Wars fans, so I knew you'd like that.
Yes.
But that's kind of, go ahead.
Sorry, I just saw The Empire Strikes Back live in concert with an orchestra. So I just heard that line. It was so epic. So that's all I wanted to say.
I can't believe you didn't tell me you did that because I am very, very jealous that is something that you experienced. That is top of mind for like things I want to do at some point in my life is watch a live orchestra performing Star Wars.
It was so epic. The last Star Wars thing I'll say, and then we'll get back to the Steelers, but the Imperial March, is classic. And I really never like listened to it that much because I was like, yeah, it's the Imperial March. And then I heard it live and I was like, this is one of the best things ever. It's just so good.
I could talk for a whole hour about Star Wars and specifically Star Wars music, but that's unbelievable. I can't believe you just dropped that in there.
Yeah,
But
I can't believe I didn't bring it up earlier. But anyways, back to Steelers.
What was I talking about?
Right. Omar Khan.
Yeah, Omar Khan. Okay, so building. So At some point, do or do not. There is no try. So again, I think in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, I'm glad he's trying because there are some owners and there are some GMs that just don't try. I can look at the Pirates for the last many, many years, excluding this offseason, essentially. They just don't try. They don't put their hat in the ring and say, hey, let's go out and get this free agent. He might be a little bit past his prime, but let's go get him. Let's sign this guy. Let's go get Aaron Rodgers. Let's try to shake things up. And I think I appreciated that because of the stagnant situation that we had been in for so long. And I'm just like, okay, let's try to just find something. And if it doesn't work, let's just throw it at the wall and see if it sticks. But I love what you said about instead of buying a ring, let's build a ring. Let's keep these guys here for long term. Let's sign these guys to extensions once their rookie contracts expire. Let's build this from the ground up because I think this is an opportunity, especially now, that we can build from the ground up. Even though it didn't originate building from the ground up this offseason, again, you go out and you sign Aaron Rodgers. That's not building from the ground up. But even right now, while Aaron Rodgers is probably going to be the quarterback for this upcoming season, he's got another opportunity to learn or Will Howard has a great opportunity to learn under him for another season. And if, again, internally, we think that Will Howard is something special, then we'll act on that and we'll give him the opportunity when that time comes. And we won't have a long leash on Aaron Rodgers if he starts to go downhill. I think you said that in one of our most recent episodes. I'm not willing to give Aaron Rodgers a long leash. And frankly, I'm not either. If he starts to waver, pull the plug. Let's find out what we have. And then let's start to build. I'm okay with where we are right now, but I'm trying to be a little bit more convicted about what Omar Khan is doing instead of just saying, oh, I really like this owner and anything that he does, I'm okay with. Because I think if we get to that mindset, I think that's a very dangerous mindset.
I agree. And I think that he has to realize, kind of like what we're saying about building, he has to realize that the bringing in the old veteran quarterback doesn't work unless you already have a Super Bowl caliber team. The only time I think that, you kind of look at teams that have done that have brought in the old veteran guy in his last year or so. It's like these are teams that, obviously I think the only one that's successful is Tom Brady with the Bucks. They were 8-8 the year before. They would have been a lot better if Jameis Winston hadn't thrown 30 interceptions. So I mean, that was a good team, hands down. And then the other most notable I can think of is Brett Favre with the Vikings. The Vikings didn't have a quarterback, and then they got Brett Favre, and everything around him was already set in place to hey, we're already a great team. We just need a quarterback. And I think that's the strategy almost that Omar Khan has had. Maybe he's just drinking the Mike Tomlin Kool-Aid and was like, oh, we have a Super Bowl caliber team. We just need a quarterback. And as we've seen, that is not the case. And so we should stop treating our offseason like that. And I completely agree. I think Aaron Rodgers, his reputation was, I feel served this year. And okay, we honored you this year. You owned this year. You had it. There was no question that you, unless you were hurt, were going to be playing out there. And I feel this year is this is done. If you're no good, you're no good. And we're going to move on. And I feel I hope that we have the you know what I'm saying.
I know
I
what you're
hope we're
saying.
able to do that. Because it's a hard thing to do, right? It's those guys don't get benched. So, but I think that out of all the people to do it, it could be Mike McCarthy because he raised Aaron Rodgers. Everything that Aaron Rodgers grew to be was because of Mike McCarthy.
Right. That's a great point. Very good point. I don't think Mike Tomlin could do that. And,
No.
maybe it wouldn't make sense for him to do it. But again, you figure the state of the Steelers right now, this is one of those situations where if it's not cutting it, it has to change. And we have to start from ground zero. And I'm okay with that. And I think we're both okay with that. Now, I want to shift to another subject because coming into the season, some people were saying, specific people even on the Steelers were saying that the defense could have been a generational defense. In retrospect, it doesn't take very long to look back and say, well, that fell flat on its face. What are we attributing that general failure to this season? Because it got better at the end, sure, but overall it was not a good defense if we're being honest with ourselves. So what's the problem? What went wrong essentially?
I'm hoping that it was Terrell Austin and Mike Tomlin. Like, I truly do hope that that's what it was the scheme. But diving in deeper, again, I don't think that this defense, like, again, the problem with buying a team is that they're not a team. And I think that we have that with a defense. I feel like TJ Watt in the past couple of years has almost distanced himself, I feel like, from the team environment. Like, he feels like his own brand right now and not necessarily one member of the team. Jalen Ramsey has not felt like a Steeler to me the day he walked in. You know, it's just like I don't know. He hasn't screamed that unity. And I think that we do have guys that want that team. I think that most guys on our roster look like that. But I think that, you know, we have some people underperforming, namely Patrick Queen. I think that he is a huge red flag. And I think that, like, I was extremely cautious of him. You know, I talked as highly as I could. My dad has had a lot of things to say about Patrick Queen, and I've never really joined in. I've always looked for, like, okay, but he's good, right? He's good. You know, he was good at Baltimore. He's good. Almost solely because I didn't want Ravens fans to be right when they were saying that he was only good because of Roquan Smith. So I think that that is a huge key, and I think that that's the thing we've missed since Ryan Shazier's. We have had no middle. And we're still looking for a middle. And I think that Peyton Wilson's great, but he's not the Mike. And I think that that's something we need. I think that our secondary needs to get better. Kyle Duggar was a great addition. I think he contributed a lot to us getting better. But I think that Joey Porter Jr.'s got to lay off the flags. He had a great year. I'm not going to harp on that because he did have a great year. But besides that, I think our cornerbacks struggled as a whole. I think that some guys didn't see the field when they should have seen it more, and then other guys saw the field when they shouldn't have. So I'm really hoping that with, you know, we're bringing in a defensive coordinator who I don't fully know how I feel about him. He survived 3 head coaches getting fired. So, like, he probably was doing something right, even though the teams were quite bad. But I think that somebody with that stability is what we need right now to kind of reinforce this team. Like, hey, you guys are staying in Pittsburgh. Like, you're a team. Like, let's get that into our heads. And I think that again, I feel like the main thing we're saying here is that the changes we're making is what needs to be made to hopefully fix all the problems. Because you're right, our total defense was 26th, and for Pittsburgh and for any team really, that's horrible.
Right. Especially when you have a proverbially minded head coach as far as the defense goes. Now, we haven't talked about Patrick Graham yet on this podcast, and he is the new defensive coordinator for the Steelers. Kind of alluding to his past, he was the Raiders defensive coordinator for the last 4 seasons, I think it was. And a lot of people have said about him that he does more with less. I mean, if you look at the Raiders defense, it's Max Crosby and that's it. And there's pretty much nothing else. And yes, the Raiders defense has not been good, but again, it's the hand that he's dealt. And I think it's interesting because of the juxtaposition. We have said about Mike Tomlin specifically that it seems like he is doing less with more. So it's almost a grand reversal of these two things where Patrick Graham, he doesn't have a good hand. He was dealt 2 7-off suits, and he's still finding a way to bluff and at least, be able to get to the final round of the calls. Whereas Mike Tomlin, he might have pocket aces, and he's flopping, and he's not winning these hands. So it's interesting because it seems like it's just a grand reversal of what we've been used to. And maybe this is exactly what we need. And I think about this too because, again, it's very relevant. Kenneth Walker won Super Bowl MVP just a couple of days ago, which great for your fantasy team. Congratulations. And hey, here's a little plug for this. If you haven't listened to the last episode, I'm not going to spoil anything for it, but let's just say David has an apology to make as well as a very special announcement. I know a lot of you have already listened to that one, but if you haven't yet, make sure you go listen to David's apology, and as well as a very special announcement in that episode. But thinking about the Seahawks again, Kenneth Walker won Super Bowl MVP. I think the only reason that he did was because they couldn't give the MVP to any one player on the defense. If you could have given it to the Seahawks defense as a whole, absolutely, they would have won that hands down. But they couldn't because the defense was such a unit. You're talking about a team. They were a team. Not one singular player was just on an island by himself making these plays. It was the whole unit. And that's why they were so successful. Drake May had nothing to do in this game. And that's the whole thing is like, I feel like the Steelers, while they might have talent, they're not a unit. They don't act like a unit. The communication has been issues in years past. I don't know if that was necessarily an issue this year, but maybe that was the case. For the Seahawks, obviously they built a Super Bowl team around their defense. And they had the offensive pieces in place. I mean, they won with Sam Darnold, for goodness sake. Like this is a big deal. So that's the thing is I think that there's an opportunity for the Steelers to gel as a defense. And if you figure out how to do that, if you do more with less, or maybe you do more with the more you actually have, this team could be more successful than what we've seen in the last couple of years.
I completely agree. And there's no reason why this team can't be the caliber defense that we saw out of the Seahawks. And I think that you're absolutely right with the Super Bowl MVP. Like the defense, like it didn't, there wasn't one player. Like it felt like they were all one person. And it was just like the 12th man was just covering the field. Like it wasn't like, and it was like back to Legion of Boom too, but it was like a no-name Legion of Boom. And that, like, I didn't even know DeMarcus Lawrence was on this team until the Super Bowl. And it's DeMarcus Lawrence who's had a good NFL career. And so, like, that's really saying something. And so, I mean, what if we could do that? Like, what if we could be a defense where you forget TJ Watt's on the team? And it's like, wouldn't that be incredible? And I think that you're right. I think that he was handed in horrible hands. There's a reason, though. I think it is a good sign. There's a reason that he stayed when 3 head coaches left. Like I feel like that. Let's not understate that because that's a very hard thing to do. And he was being interviewed for head coaching roles too. So I think that there is more than meets the eye than just like the eye test of looking at here's what the Raiders stink. I think there's more here, and I think that I'm very. He's a question mark for sure, but I'm very hopeful and would love to see him make this defense one of the best in the league.
And two, part of that is we're going to have a true defensive coordinator now because as much as Terrell Austin might have been calling the plays, we had the theory that maybe Mike Tomlin was in his ear making these double checks, this like 2-factor authentication that was going on. We don't know that for sure, but you know that he has a hand in the defense. So as much as Terrell Austin was the one that was actually verbally giving the cues, there's probably an added layer to that. Mike McCarthy has already said, I'm going to let the defensive guy do his thing. I'm not even going to meddle in it. Like he knows that the offense is his responsibility. He's going to let the defense take itself out as far as, Patrick Graham is concerned. So again, this is a complete shakeup. The team is so different from this year to last year, but even just looking back at this year, it seems like we're filling some holes where we were inadequate. We're looking at the defense. We're doing less with more. Now it's like, okay, we've got a guy that is kind of the polar opposite of that. We've got an offense where, yes, we kind of just bought our way into it, but now maybe a little bit of continuity can help us out a little bit. So looking back at this year as a whole, and I went back and I listened to our predictions, our second predictions for the season. Do you remember? You want to remember what our predictions were? Do you remember what we said?
Like for record?
For records, yes.
Did I say 11 wins and did you say 10?
You're absolutely right.
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
So we were pretty spot on, and we made the distinction because before Aaron Rodgers, we said we're going to go 8-9, and I think we both landed at that exact record. And then after Aaron Rodgers, thinking about it again, the difference between Mason Rudolph and Aaron Rodgers, he bought us 2 wins, which is great. We made it to the playoffs for better or for worse, and we were pretty spot on with that. So as far as the expectations go, I think we got to where we thought we were going to be this year. The problem is, though, it's still just not satisfying. Being right doesn't mean I'm satisfied with being right, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I completely agree. It's like we're being right in the sense that we want to be wrong. Like, we're going to keep saying the same thing until you prove us wrong. And I do think that this team will do that. I think this is going to be a new season. a completely new operation. And I'm really excited to see, yeah, that just attachment of like, you do your defense, I'll do my offense, instead of like this lordship over everything and kind of meddling a little too much. And I think that, I'm excited to see just a guy calling defensive plays because you look at the Seahawks, the first defensive play caller head coach to ever win a Super Bowl, Mike McDonald. It's like if Mike Tomlin really wanted his hand in the defense, he could have just been calling the plays. So I think that I'm just so excited for the fresh start, so excited for these guys to step in and really, hopefully get this team up to what it should be.
It'll be interesting once we start diving into the offseason and seeing what we need as far as like the draft goes. That'll be a big talking point with the draft being in Pittsburgh. We'll see what the things shake out as far as free agency goes. Usually that process happens very fast. I guess unless you're Aaron Rodgers and you decide to wait until June, July, whenever he signed. Like that's the thing is the offseason kind of goes fast as far as the signings go in the NFL. And we're going to kind of get an idea of what our team looks like very soon once that time actually comes. So it'll be a fast-paced offseason. It'll probably be a long offseason, but it'll be a fast-paced offseason as far as our dissection of the team goes. And we're excited to dive into that. But as far as the offseason goes, we're excited to do some fun stuff. We have a lot of fun episodes planned. We've got some trivia. We've got some special guests that we've got coming on the podcast. And I think what you can expect from us is a weekly upload. We kind of just wanted to do a little feeler, a little retrospective this week. I'm not sure exactly if we accomplished that or not, but hey, we rambled for 45 minutes, so we did our time. But expect a lot of fun this offseason, and we're gonna have a good time. Myself, Zane, and David on the Boardman Black and Gold podcast, which is always sponsored by Zecca Enterprises, crafting furniture solutions in northwestern Pennsylvania. You can call 919-406-4679 to turn your furniture problems into furniture solutions. As always, you can follow us on Instagram at Boardman and Gold. Send us your thoughts. If you have a talking point that you want us to dive into, whether that's just a piece of Steelers history, something that happened this offseason, something that happened this last season, let us know. We want to field your questions. We want to field your thoughts. And heck, if you're a Steelers fan, we're probably going to bring you on the podcast at some point. There is nothing that you can do to elude my reach. I will grab you and drag you kicking and screaming to give your thoughts on the Steelers and what's going on with this franchise. And we're going to have a good time this offseason. And I don't want to necessarily spoil what we've got coming next week, but I think you guys are going to enjoy it. And maybe I'm not even prepared to even talk about it because I'm saying that right now. And I'm like, well, I don't know what we're going to do next week, but rest assured, we're going to have a good time. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like how we're talking about how our team should be a team, our fan base is a community. And so we're excited to keep that going and be more active this off season. And yeah, looking forward to all those fun events. And we'll be able to focus a little bit more on these fun ones because our coaching staff is basically already filled, which I did not think was going to happen this quickly. So there's already one thing that we don't have to wait for.
Absolutely. I mean, that's, again, the NFL offseason goes very fast, and it kind of makes the offseason itself longer because nobody waits around to hire anybody. Nobody waits around to sign a free agent. Free agency happens in like 2 days, whereas, we've got MLB players with pitchers and catchers reporting tomorrow that haven't even signed yet. So it's a wild difference, but we're going to have some fun this offseason, myself, Zane, and David. It's going to be good. You're going to want to tune in. If you got friends, tell them about the podcast. Even if they're not Steelers fans, let them know because we've got some fun stuff going on. And as much as it's a Steelers appeal, I think we can appeal to some just general NFL fans as well, especially for some of these trivia episodes that we've got going on. I will spoil that I'm going to quiz David in one of these episodes one of these days and just dive into the depths of his Steelers knowledge because he is just an encyclopedia as far as Steelers history goes. So that's one that I'm super excited for.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I'm also nervous because I know you can pull some deep, good questions. So I'll have to do some freshen up. But I'm very excited for that and these other episodes to come.
Well, as always, we appreciate you listening to Boardman Black and Gold. Keep an eye on the Instagram this offseason for some updates, and we'll see you the next time here on the Boardman Black and Gold podcast.